Hi class, and welcome to week 3. I hope everybody had a good weekend. I hope that you are working on your audits. I know a few of you ended up needing to change your brands or organizations because they simply were not posting enough, and that is really an issue. So if that's the case and you're kind of starting fresh this week, you're going to have to start with last week and kind of build it out from there. One of the things that I really want you to be paying attention to this week, and this is what I'm asking you to post on here, I've given you some other additional resources for research for engagement and different tactics that you can have for engagement. Obviously, there's a lot. I do want you to read, about stories, creating engagement, and then also how a call to action in a post can create that engagement. There are a lot of other readings that you can peruse. You obviously don't have to read every single one of these, but I think what for down here, this is for when I want to see you discuss how brands are engaging with the COVID, the continuing pandemic. Also, the whole, the continuing Black Lives Matters movement, anti-hate, the whole, the Confederate statue. All of these issues are really playing out right now, and brands are getting involved, and organizations are getting involved. But are they doing it in a way that's authentic? So that's really one of the things we want to start looking at through your audit this week. What is their messaging? What are brands doing? You might have to reach back a little bit just for this discussion board posting to like Memorial Day. Excuse me, I have a little frog in my throat today. So you don't have to read every single one of these, but I think if you sort of read a couple, and you will really kind of start to see, the message here basically is actions speak louder than words. And it's not enough to just get on social media and post a platitude. We support Black Lives Matter. We support diversity. Okay, how? It's what we're really looking for is how brands are showing us doing that through concrete action. So these are a couple of things I want you to look at in your audits this week as you continue to do that. The other thing I want to bring up too, one of the things you're going to be seeing in your audits as you look at brands and organizations posting is that obviously people post a lot of complaints. Now it depends on the brand, right, or the organization and what they do. Like if you're like a DoorDash, I remember about 3 years ago, DoorDash was just, their social media was like a nightmare of complaints. Things have definitely gotten better. So obviously it depends on the brand, what's going on. Some brands are better than others in responding. Like typically I think Domino's has been pretty good about responding. But here's really the dilemma, right? And this came up in the week 2 discussion board. The dilemma becomes, right, and this is what was discussed in the video, in the expert session, is how do you handle what comes back at you, if as the social media practitioner, you're getting these complaints, you're getting, issues that are coming up. And how do you manage all of that? And it can be really difficult. If you're getting a lot of complaints, it's difficult. So what's really started to happen on social networks is that, like more and more we do see Facebook, brands on Facebook using chatbots and in order to try to help with customer service issues. And we also, brands are also getting smarter in the sense that they're saying, we don't want all of these complaints on our social media pages, which are just public facing. We want to sort of be able to not necessarily hide it, but just sort of manage it better. So one way that they do that, obviously, is chatbots, and now more and more messaging apps are getting into the act. So it's interesting. Let me show you this Padlet, some of the resources I have up here. So one of the resources I wanted to show you is this white paper. This white paper, it's getting a little old now. It's 6 years old, but I included this because there's a very good section on like a history of social media I'm sorry, not social media, but the history of messaging apps that some of you might be interested in, if that's something that interests you. And here you can see like a timeline of how it happened. Now, obviously, it's stopping in 2014, so this is of some limited value, but I think it's good for like sort of a historical perspective. I have a more up-to-date white paper, but it just doesn't have sources in it, and so I'm looking for a better one to share with you guys. But this has some very good background information, but one of the points that they make is, well, what is really the difference? And I think that this is a historically, this is a good difference, so that social networks and apps both provide, obviously, a way for consumers to connect with brands and organizations. But it's really what distinguishes them, and actually we can't even say size. No, this is from the older report. We know now that more people use social messaging apps than they do actual social media platforms. And that's because, and what has driven that is obviously mobile, the mobile trend, and just being able to, do more and more on our phones, download apps. There's more apps that we can download. I know, for example, what's the name of that app? Oh, Viber. I think the Washington Post, I believe, uses Viber, which is a messaging app for people who want to get, certain kind of push notifications on their phones for news stories. So you can really, and even though you could get push notifications, from other sources, like they were mostly news aggregates. So now this is a newer trend now of like newspapers actually using these to directly connect with the readers rather than having to go through like an aggregate and, where you as a publisher aren't controlling what's being, pushed out and, from your publication. But a messaging, the biggest difference really historically has been that a messaging app is private. Okay, that really is the difference. Well, hopefully it's private. That it's private, right? So it was originally started out like one-to-one, and then and actually it's interesting too that when we look at the differences of social media apps versus messaging apps, really Facebook was the one who disconnected their messaging feature and made it a standalone app. So in that way, you can kind of say that Facebook was really, and I think they did that in like 2000, and it's like pretty early they did that, right? Like, I don't want to say 2011, but it was very early on that they did that. And that really, so that became a thing where suddenly you had Messenger as a standalone. You didn't have to be on Facebook to get Messenger, right? So that was a pretty big difference. So that's the example now of a platform creating the app. Now we have apps that are really kind of functioning more like their own platform, like WhatsApp. So the idea is that a messaging app is primarily, it's meant to be private, right? So obviously if you were dealing with a brand or you had a customer complaint, it's much more efficient for you. And even though like Twitter has emerged as a social platform for customer service, and you'll see a lot of brands have more than one, Twitter handle, and some of them are like Lyft, Urban Outfitters. A lot of them have specific, Facebook, feeds, just Facebook accounts just to handle complaints. But what are you really doing when you're complaining, right? You are posting it on their public help page, right? Then they usually say what? DM me the details. You DM them, and then you end up emailing, right? And then so messenger apps really streamline the process, right? And they can even take it further. You can even get a refund. You can send a payment. Messenger apps are really superior, a superior way of handling, customer complaints privately. Now, messaging apps have gotten more, even like Facebook Messenger, much more group. You can do stickers, so it's like almost like a little vertical, like when you use Facebook Messenger, it's almost like a little vertical social network that you're using within Messenger, which, again, it's really the group, feature, now it's private, but it's still a way for really to do that kind of instant back and forth communication. That is clunkier if you're doing it within a Facebook group itself on a Facebook platform. So in Messenger, it's a lot easier just for groups to communicate. At least I think it is. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. So really, a social network is a social platform. When you're posting something, it's you to many, right? Whereas a messenger app is going to be more private.